I just walk up to you on the street and go, "What's FAPE?" Because you were just walking.
This feels like a normal thing that happens on the sidewalk. It's free and appropriate public education. Doesn't that tell you all you need to know?
It tells me nothing.
I'm Anna.
I'm Darcy.
And I'm Leanne, and we're here to discuss court cases because they teach us how to effectively run special education.
And I'm Stefan. I work in general education, and I'm here to get speds too.
So I brought a case around FAPE, so free appropriate public education, and that appropriate part as determined by the IEP team. So this was a school district that has a young adult student, so is going into a transition program. And school starts, kind of the classic story, and it comes home and pretty soon is unhappy, is getting sent home with homework. Parents call up and is like, "Hey, what's going on?" And the teacher's like, "No, I knew. I used to be an art teacher. We're just doing all good things in the classroom, and we'll be having an IEP meeting in November. So, just wait until November." Things get worse and worse for the kid. They put the kid in therapy because he's so unhappy going to school, and they're really worried about his mental health. And they have this IEP meeting in November, and the teacher says, "Well, when you first called and complained, I wasn't certified. I didn't have my certificate."
Teacher just flat out said that to the parent.
Yeah. And she's like, "It's okay though. It was only 15 days. And then I got my emergency cert. And the district was really, really helpful. And they brought the teacher in for 3 days, signed all my stuff and said I was good to go. So it's been going a lot better since then."
Didn't she say she was an art teacher before?
Yeah, she was an art teacher.
She wasn't certified.
She wasn't certified in special ed.
Certified in sped.
I thought districts had to notify you if your teacher wasn't certificated. Is that true, or is that a district policy?
So it depends. If they're in a title school, they have to send out notification. But technically, I don't know that she would have been on that list because she was working on getting her certification. She was done with her classes. She was just waiting to get the emergency certification part and do her student teaching. Yeah.
Okay, so this teacher for the student in a transition program is a student teacher.
No, she's emergency certified.
Emergency. Okay.
Stefan, do you know what a transition program is?
I've got that down for a question for later. Yes, it's a curious note, a few things. Actually, let's just recap.
Could I go through that really quickly?
In just a second. I just want to make sure I'm on the right page here. So you said we're going to be talking about FAPE, which is free, appropriate public education. And we're talking about a student, you said a young adult going to a transition program. Now, I think I know what a transition program is because I was working in the school district, a little bit of work with a teacher who I think worked in a transition program. These are for students who are 18 to 21.
Could be. It can start as early as 14, and it's required to start at the year the student turns 16. So to have some kind of plan for transition about what you're going to engage in after high school.
Okay. And when are they exited from a transition program?
It depends on what the IEP team makes that decision. So what the kid wants to do.
When do they age out?
Stay until 22.
Okay.
And that is recently new.
Okay. What did it used to be 21? Yes. Okay. So can start as early as 14, required at 16 to at least have a plan for what the kid wants to do post high school. Maxes out at 22, like they age out at 22. And these are for what students?
Any student on an IEP.
Any student.
Yeah.
Okay.
All students transition to post-secondary something, right? So every kid gets a transition plan. So November comes around, we have the IEP. The IEP prior qualified in reading, math, adaptive transition, speech, and OT.
Wow. Stefan's face.
Reading, writing,
Math,
math.
adaptive.
What's adaptive?
Adaptive is how we maneuver our environment.
Oh,
That's a better way to say that, you guys.
It's a lot of different skills like self-help and
Functional living skills.
yes.
so functional living skills, things like how this kid would pay bills, cook food for themselves.
Could be. It tends to be more of like managing your environment. So I would say, like, if you said something like pay bills, I would say that's math.
Oh,
Yeah, I would say there's more safety in it. So how do you get from point A to point B safely? How do you
Do I know who to call in emergency?
got it.
Do I know who safe people are?
Do I know who's safe people? Okay.
it can include some relationship stuff, but that usually goes under social emotional too. So did you say the disability category?
I did not, but the child's other health impaired.
Other health impaired.
Mhm.
Uh,
So pretty
It's a lot of services for
I was gonna say.
kid.
yeah.
Like needing lots of support. And all of those services were primarily in a special ed class.
so prior served in a special ed class.
It's not super typical for a student with other health impairment to still be getting speech and motor services that late in their education either.
Yeah.
So that just paints a different picture for those of us that work in this world of SPED.
What picture does that paint? Like,
Just a kid that needed a very highly qualified teacher.
gotcha.
Yeah. To manage all of that.
And to that point,
Pretty specific skills.
what did you say the teacher was sending home that raised concerns with the parents? I missed that.
Worksheets.
Okay,
for homework.
that's a big one.
Darcy's definitely gonna frown
I
on
don't like worksheets. I
It's-
don't like them at any point, but definitely even sending them home is silly.
I think I'm starting to see the problem.
Are you getting to the appropriate part?
Yeah. I don't think that even needs to be defined necessarily by the. That's wild. Okay.
Yeah. So this November IEP, the new teacher wrote it and got rid of all of those services and wrote services in
Wait, in the IEP, the teacher got rid of
I
services?
thought you said this case was kind of vanilla. It is not.
no, it's
Darcy, sandbag before the microphones. Mine's boring and very straightforward. And here's this teacher who's like, you know what? Forget all of that stuff.
So, Stephen, an evaluation is what qualifies you for services. An IEP team or the IEP case manager especially cannot say, no, you don't actually need adaptive. Yeah. That's an evaluation team.
And right there.
So
you're denying FAPE already. So I can't wait to hear what happened next because
you gotta hear the services. So she writes services for school transition with a para, social emotional, adaptive support with social with a para, communication vocational, and transition.
So when you say
transition, like I don't know.
Yeah, so I guess that was my question. When you say transition, because he had qualified for that prior, is that like no? Because having a goal around transition doesn't necessarily qualify you for the transition program. The kid is on an IEP,
Right?
So it qualifies. So
Right.
what's a transition?
Yeah, it's kind of confusing, like the difference between a school trip. So, like it, and they didn't list the goals, right? So it says like school transition makes me think, can he go to lunch? Maybe, and then transition is the other service of like what he's gonna do after high school.
So when you said whatever with a para, that was like the area was such and such with a para.
right, that was the area on the matrix page that was being served, and they were all being served as a specially designed instruction. We don't really in the WACs. There's really no specially designed instruction in transition. I mean, like by itself, right? It's the overlap of reading, writing, math, you qualify for. Now I'm going to write a transition goal related to those areas, not transition as a standalone area. But this was creative. I want to hear more. Really thinking outside the box.
The meeting also doesn't go well because people come and go, they don't stay, the right people aren't there, right? And so there's kind of this like parents feeling like we had this 2-hour meeting, everything just got thrown at the wall, people came and went, and this is a mess.
As a parent, they, oh man, I'm grasping, but they had the right to just essentially stop, right? If they knew, they could have just said, you can't be doing any of this.
Yeah, we can reschedule, like when people get sick and stuff like that, you know.
Okay.
And it's really hard to get, I mean, I think it's hard to get everybody's schedule to get everybody there. And so sometimes parents feel like, well, this might be the best I can access.
Gotcha.
Right? Or I don't want to be that parent that says, can we reschedule?
Gotcha.
Right? Like they're trying to play, I think they're playing really nice.
Then there's a power dynamic there too, right?
For
like
sure.
You're working with the system. Okay.
For sure. And so I kind of, there's not a lot of detail in between this, except that it's noted that the parent makes multiple and lengthy attempts to get a copy of the IEP after the meeting.
Well, that's not a good sign.
which is required.
Right. They have to do a copy of that, right? Like everybody signs it. I mean, like, yeah, I've been in IEP meetings as a gen ed teacher. Okay. And so, okay.
And with that, their prior written notice. But if there's actually something on there that they're unhappy about, that they can say, wait a minute, I'm not happy with this.
Okay.
It also summarizes the meeting, so it's nice to read afterwards when you're.
Yeah, because that's a lot of information thrown at you in a meeting.
And it like formalizes decisions, and being able to see everything in writing is so different than sitting there and being told things.
Yes.
Okay.
And the things that we talked about her writing new goals in for services aren't things.
They're not aligned with the evaluation.
Yeah.
Which is required.
So they wouldn't be services to offer necessarily. So
I did quickly look up transition services WAC though, and you can provide it as an SDI or a related service. So that's okay. You just can't be changing from adaptive to social emotional, which I think she did do that. Yeah.
Okay.
So would it, for that, you don't have to have transition in the eval. You can just add it as an SDI in an IEP.
Well, technically, the IEP team determines the services.
Yeah.
The eval makes the recommendation, but the IEP team can change services. I mean, usually we see reading, writing, right? Because those are pretty simple. But like, I mean, the IEP team can say we want to do this instead if that's aligned with the data that we have.
I feel like the student already qualifies for a transition plan just due to age and having an IEP. So putting transition as an area of service is allowed without an evaluation, I would think. Saying that it,
as a team decision,
right.
Not a case manager.
Yeah, and your transition assessment can be done by the teacher in the form of an interview.
Yeah.
So I don't think adding the transition was my red flag. It was all the other things.
Communication was not going to be from an SLP, speech language pathologist. Social emotional appeared and adaptive disappeared, right?
And so kind of the interesting part of this case was as the parents were multiple and lengthy attempts trying to get the IEP, second, they filed due process. Still did not have the IEP from November.
Wow.
And guess what we got on March 9th?
The IEP.
With the actual service matrix with it all messed up, not matching right and not aligned.
So you think the school district was not send an IEP because they just knew they were so out of whack and underwater?
I'm not sure that the art teacher knew how to
Like attach a file to an email or
to
something?
write the IEP. I'm not sure they knew
Oh.
how to write the IEP. She's
And-
probably like, "I sat in IEP meetings. I can do this."
And when you're an emergency or conditionally certified teacher, you're supposed to have somebody signing off on things and making sure that you're doing the process correctly. And sending that home would have been part of that. So maybe she wasn't getting the mentoring that they were required.
So those 3 days of mentoring and the district like checked that off.
Yeah.
That's not going to get you through
Yeah.
your caseload of IEP meetings for the year.
Okay.
So somebody should have been walking alongside her helping with that.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And 4 months, I got to give kudos to parents.
That's impatient.
That's impatient parents, right?
Yeah, I feel like I would have been marching into that office. Like,
Yeah.
yikes.
And
Okay.
for the judge to use multiple and lengthy attempts, I think wasn't interesting.
And there was obviously documentation on all those attempts. Okay.
Yeah. So what other questions do you have?
What happened?
Well, let's talk about FAPE, because that's the and I now know a little bit about this, but you said they filed for due process, meaning like starting like legal proceedings, like official stuff against the school district on March 2nd. And like, what does their claim look like?
So their claim says that the child was denied FAPE because the IEP was not in place, and that the people working with her son were not certified. So they wanted to be paid for the therapy.
Ooh, okay. Paid for the therapy that they put them in towards the beginning. Okay.
Yep, which he's been going through this whole time. They want the school to pay for a private SLP because they switched it to communication, which is not the same as the speech therapy he was getting before. So they want them to pay for a private speech person.
Okay.
And they want comp ed.
Comp ed, which is complementary education.
Compensatory education. So it means you missed this or my kid didn't get it and now you have to pay it back.
Oh, so what does that look like? Like, what is compensatory?
Compensation of the lost services.
Money.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, it costs the district money, but they have to provide the service.
Yeah. Gotcha. So you didn't give him 30 minutes of reading every day. I want this much reading.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about, say, free appropriate public education, like it's supposed to have access to that, right? And his, I should know this better since we talked about it before, but because he's on an because he's on an IEP, his access to public education has to be specially designed, right?
Yes.
And he's been evaluated and identified with all these different things. And so they denied FAPE by saying you don't actually need these things because I feel like you don't, despite and so the real issue they're running into here is they had this evaluation and the IEP team said these things align, and then they didn't have another evaluation. They just kind of misaligned them all.
Yeah.
And then we're way out of compliance with like not sending him copies of IEPs and all those things. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I guess what happened?
So guess what the judge did?
Lit him up. That seems pretty straightforward.
I said this was straightforward, and look, you got it.
By the very end, it's straightforward. But man, what a road! That's crazy. So they asked for paying for the therapy and a private SLP and compensatory education or comp ed. And I am assuming the judge was just like, yeah. Were there any? Well, the judge just gave him all that.
The judge did not give him all that.
Oh, well, that was a twist.
Yeah. But the judge gave him comp ed, so 231 hours compensatory ed, and that counts for the 65 school days from when his IEP lapsed to the March 9th date. So all of that one-on-one setting with a certified and qualified staff member. The parents, they said, we're not paying for the private therapy because you've never requested for mental health evaluation. And
Oh, that makes sense.
right, they said you didn't really prove there was a need there, so we're not going to pay for that.
They usually align the compensatory services with what was missed off the IEP, and that wasn't part of the IEP. So that makes perfect sense.
In compensatory services, is there like a deadline as to when that needs to be? Like you have that 200 whatever hours.
Yeah, it's in the corrective action plan usually, so they tell you how long you have to get that done. And I'm sure they had a whole school year. That's a ton of hours. Because now you have a kid that goes to school all day and you have to make up services.
Yeah.
And high school kids love that.
No, I was going to say, what is the pitch?
Yeah, you super love school already.
Yeah. So it was found as a substantive violation of F.A.P.E.
Yeah. Okay.
I would guess they didn't get the private speech therapy either, right? The school district has an opportunity to make that service up.
And even though it wasn't on the matrix, the speech therapist gave the service.
Oh, because she's a speech therapist. She's qualified and knew what was right and wrong.
It was like, yeah, you can't do that.
Oh,
so the speech never went away.
Okay.
The parents accepted 175 hours of comp ed.
Okay.
They calculated out what they wanted for a schedule and said 230 was too much.
Was there any sort of retaliatory is the wrong word, but any sort of corrective action taken on the district who has someone in that position who's clearly not qualified to do that job?
No. So the judge said they went 15 days without that certificate from OSPI, but that within itself is not a violation of F.A.P.E.
Okay.
And that the district had a plan for that teacher to be supervised, and that was found appropriate.
Okay.
I would guess the district is rethinking their
mentoring
practice of 3 days of mentoring is enough.
You'd hope, because this is going to cost him. I mean, that's
yes.
a lot. Okay. Had they requested mental health services from the district because of what was happening at school and the district denied them, do you think the judge would have compensated them for the private therapy?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
I think they kind of missed that step asking. But I also think, from the family side, they're already, I feel like, really making an effort. Like, hey, I want the IEP. Something's not working, right?
Yeah.
Like all these things. And it's kind of like one more thing. It's already not working. If I ask them to do one more thing, that's not going to work either.
Yeah, makes sense.
Well, and what you want isn't more counseling. What you want is the school environment to be a better match for your kids so that they don't need as much counseling. So,
which is where that appropriate piece comes in. Like because it's not. Again, all right. Credit to you. It did end up being pretty straightforward because it's not hard to identify where it's not appropriate, right?
Yeah, you can see how much harder it would get if they even had formulated the IEP correctly,
mm-hmm.
and still things were not working at school.
Yes. Okay. That feels like a weird question to ask, but thinking about, we had said we're going to end with action steps. What's the call to action with the steps? Well, don't just ignore all the prior goals that are aligned to evaluation. Seems like a pretty decent action step. But from your guys' perspective, is it around teacher mentoring? Is it around?
I think two really big pieces. One is the teacher mentoring. We've had so many new teachers in the field, especially in special education, that really having a plan for them to have somebody to go to and ask questions and not leave it on that person to seek help, I think is really important.
And certified or not, coming in as a brand new special ed teacher, you don't know what's going on, right? Your certification is about how to teach. It's not about the rest of it. And that's a small part of special ed right now.
Sadly.
Just actual teaching.
So if you're a brand new teacher without any support, maybe a call to action or maybe an action step is to ask questions, not just assume you can do it. I think
it's the district's responsibility to make sure that there's different levels of support. for new teachers, and even more so for special education.
Yeah,
Because the principal could have not even known this was happening.
yeah. There's there's two jobs of a special ed teacher. There's the job of being an instructor, but then there's the job of being a case manager and putting all the pieces together and designing a program that's going to get the student to where they want to be. And I would guess that the program itself didn't look very good, not only on paper, but in real life.
That's why you go from a change of like, this kid's done fine all through. I mean, he's a young adult and
Right.
done just fine until now we have this wait, something in the system has changed in his day.
So what was your point number 2?
My point number 2 is it's much harder. So do your IEP sometime. Like, that's so simple, right? Because even if she had copied everything over, and I hate the copy everything over button, I always say, please don't use it. But in her case, please use it, right? Like, that would have been such an easy thing. And then it would have been much harder, sadly, for the family to be like, something's not right. My kid's unhappy. But for the teacher, they could say, well, look, they're getting reading here, they're getting math here. And that's where that part becomes so complicated and difficult to figure out. That's why I like this one. It was really easy to see where that fell down. But if somebody had just copied that over, we're having a much different conversation about FAPE.
Gotcha. Okay.
So there can be procedural errors, and then there's errors in delivery, I guess. Don't they have a better name for it than that? There you go. Their procedural error was being late and not sending a copy home, but then there were lots of the substantive.
Well, that was a very good one. That was very interesting. And yeah, the other thing that I was thinking about this morning is we don't have a good way to stop recording. What do we say at the very end?
What did you learn today, Stefan?
I do feel very specifying too, but that was very helpful. All of this can be cut. I'm trying to think of a way to round that up.
I mean, just fade into some exit music. I think you're fine.